Okay, hi everyone. It is Dr. Michele Ross. I am the Director of Education at Spore, and today is our Wellness Wednesday session. Today is a very special day for me and the fibromyalgia community. Today is, of course, May 12th, and it is Fibromyalgia Awareness Day. And so, for anyone that has this disease, it's really a great day for people to really learn about what it is, how you might be able to take care of it, how you can, support someone that you know with this disease, because again, it is something that a lot of people struggle with. There are over 10 million people in the United States with fibromyalgia, and there are, of course, many millions of other people around the world struggling with this disease. And a lot of people are undiagnosed too. There are so many things that fibromyalgia can masquerade as. Sometimes people think that they have MS, or they think they have lupus, or just some kind of chronic pain or nerve disease. And it can take them many, many years to get diagnosed with fibromyalgia. So I'm really passionate about fibromyalgia because I was diagnosed myself a little bit over 5 years ago. I was always feeling sick for many years, so I don't know whether my fibromyalgia sort of appeared then or was something that I was dealing with for many years. I had symptoms like nausea, headaches, fatigue. I was definitely the person that was always at work, napping in the car in the garage. That's definitely not normal behavior if you're not a sick person, right? I had a lot of chronic pain, but I always attributed it to, maybe I just work too much. I do a lot of things with my hands. I was working as a neuroscientist, doing brain surgeries and things like that. And I just thought I had a really demanding job, right? I was always tired, always in pain. And it took a couple years outside of working in the research lab to realize that I was really sick. I wasn't, being able to eat food without having horrible allergies or stomach pain. I was always having headaches, always in pain. Things like my nerves just stopped working at times. Like my hand went dead. Like I would start having pins and needles, say in my legs and arms a lot, and just a lot of really nasty symptoms. So, fibromyalgia can definitely be a disease that's confusing as heck for a lot of people. And I want to just look in the room right now. I know that we're going to have some people tuning in soon in the hour. So I want to let everyone know that you can type in questions in the comment section. And this replay of this special Wellness Wednesday session on mushrooms and fibromyalgia will be available in the Spore Mushroom Community Group pretty much forever. So don't worry if you've missed out. You can definitely watch it. And if you ever have a question, you can always drop it in the comments below. I'll make sure to either answer it in the comments, DM you if it's more of a personal answer. And again, I really want to stress that I'm here for the Spore mushroom community. I know that today we'll be talking about fibromyalgia, but we can support you, wherever you are in your wellness journey, whatever your needs are, wherever you're coming to mushrooms for health. So again, the reason why I'm so excited about talking about fibromyalgia is something that I've been diagnosed with, and it's something that I really think mushrooms can help with, a lot of plant medicine. So what is fibromyalgia in the first place? Again, is a chronic pain disorder. It's really when your nerves are hypersensitive to pain, to temperature, to touch, to so many different things. And it's is very much a real disease. Sometimes doctors don't know a lot about fibromyalgia, and they say things like, "Oh, it's all in your head. There's no any actual damage to your nerves or something. You're just highly sensitive to pain or something like that." That's not in fact true. There's actually so many things that are off balance in fibromyalgia. So, for example, one of the reasons why we're responsive to pain is because we have high levels of inflammation in the body. Many of us do actually have nerve damage, so very similar to peripheral nerve damage that's found in diabetes and some other diseases. So some of us have the nerve damage, some of us don't, but we all respond inappropriately to pain. We also have different levels of neurotransmitters in our brain. So, for example, serotonin. So serotonin is a neurotransmitter that's really important for things like sleep, or appetite or feeling good. It's definitely involved in things like depression. You don't make enough serotonin. In fibromyalgia, we're achy, we don't sleep well, we have pains, spasms, all these different, symptoms. And it's really related to some of the imbalances that we find in our brain. So people with fibromyalgia, they don't make enough serotonin or it's not in the right place. A lot of your serotonin is made in the gut, and we know that our gut is off balance as well. And this disease, as well as a lot of autoimmune and neurological conditions. So if your gut's unhealthy, right, you're not absorbing nutrients, you're also not making enough serotonin. So there's a lot of things that, can be off balance. We have an imbalance in dopamine. Dopamine is a neurotransmitter that's really important for attention, for focus, for thinking and planning, for getting motivated, right? Like if you want to go get motivated to go to the gym, you have to have some dopamine going on, or else you're probably not going to get out of your chair. It's the pleasure neurotransmitter. It's involved in reward and things like that. And if you think about somebody who has a lot of fatigue, who has problems focusing, they have brain fog, that's like a number one thing for fibromyalgia. There's just so much brain fog. Sometimes people forget their name or where they put their keys. And if you're a younger person with fibromyalgia, myself, I'm 38, I'm going to be 39 in about a month. But to me, I always felt like after I got diagnosed, I was like, goodness, it makes a little bit more sense. I thought maybe I was getting early Alzheimer's. I can't remember anything, and what's interesting, again, is that a lot of the medications that will treat things like that, right, they're not actually helping some of the conditions, or they might have some marginal efficacy. So there's not a lot of medications, for example, that help with attention that aren't stimulants. So if you are trying to deal with excessive sleepiness during the day, or you're trying to deal with, inattention problems or an inability to focus, you're always feeling sleepy at work, your doctor might prescribe you something like Adderall or Ritalin. These are stimulants. They do have side effects, they can be addictive, they can be dangerous. And it's interesting because for every prescription drug that may or may not be effective or helpful for you, there's always like a plant medicine alternative. And for fibromyalgia, I found it really interesting. I was on all the traditional medications. So I was on things like antidepressants. I was on things like opioids. I was on, anti-anxiety medications, all sorts of things. Like, there's a huge cocktail they sort of throw at you because you have so many different symptoms that impact so many different, systems. Your endocannabinoid system is off, your dopamine system, your serotonin system, your GABA system, human growth factor is off. Everything is off. Your immune system doesn't work. So many different things don't work. And so they just sort of like throw the whole garbage pail at you. And then that can be really, really frustrating. So before I go too much into, say like what the difference is between plant medicines and prescription pills, I was just checking in to see if we have anyone coming into the room. I know that a lot of people joining the Spore community are patients and consumers looking to get healthy. So I know some of us might not have fibromyalgia. Some of us might know somebody. Some of us watching might not even know what fibromyalgia is and are just learning for the first time. So what is the difference between prescriptions and plant medicine? Of course, prescriptions are prescribed by your doctor. Typical prescriptions include like tramadol for, it's an opioid for pain. And again, opioids can be very dangerous. They're good for relieving pain, but they can be addictive and cause overdose. So they're not exactly safe. And doctors don't really want to prescribe that anymore for chronic pain diseases. Again, antidepressants working on the serotonin system, anti-anxiety drugs that work on, say, your GABA system and things like that. But myself, I actually got off probably about 10 different medications and have transitioned to, no medications whatsoever except for plant medicine. And plant medicine, by definition, is really things that are natural. It is sort of funny because we use this term plant medicine to describe things like CBD, hemp oil, cannabis, mushrooms, kratom, Indian herbs like ashwagandha and things like that. It's funny though, because mushrooms are actually not plants. They're actually fungi. So they're completely different family there, but we sort of lump them all in the same thing because it's easier to say plant medicine than it is to say, plants and fungi. But technically, mushrooms are fungi; they are not plants. But for just the ease of talking about this, we just try to sort of lump all the natural medicines, including fungi or mushrooms, in under plant medicine, but they are not plants. So during my journey with fibromyalgia, of course, I did a lot of reading. Of course, normal doctors and scientists really aren't trained on some of the alternative medicines like cannabis or medicinal mushrooms or even magic mushrooms. I'll actually touch a little bit on all these different plant medicines during this Q&A session here. Again, driving awareness of plant medicine for fibromyalgia, chronic fatigue syndrome, and other immune health and neurological disorders. Now, again, plant medicine is just really effective, but again, not taught in normal medical school. So doctors will learn about, the body systems, learn about the endocannabinoid system, maybe in like one lesson, like an hour or two. They don't really teach them about medical marijuana. They don't teach them about CBD. They don't teach them about nutrition. They don't teach them about medicinal mushrooms or psilocybin or anything like that. If your doctor happens to know about these things, it's because they took continuing education classes that are either offered at conferences or online. For example, a lot of doctors are learning about, say, psychedelic medicines for different, anxiety or addiction disorders or things like that. Some doctors are going to conferences learning about cannabis for different chronic pain things. So I'm going to share a little bit about how I use mushrooms first for fibromyalgia, and then talk about, how it fits in with some of the other things that I take. And talk a little bit about how mushrooms and other natural treatments might work for your fibromyalgia. Of course, talking about this, I'm talking about my personal experience. I do work with patients, but in this capacity, I do want to make it just a general disclaimer that I'm not working as, your doctor or anything. So if you do have any questions about plant medicine, or you want to, talk about maybe adding, say, medicinal mushrooms to your wellness mix, right? It's always good to talk to your doctor first, talk to your physician, your nurse, whoever it is that you are in contact with, just because it's really important to make sure that you don't have anything like medication interactions or anything. Again, even if it's natural, it might not be right for you. My reminder always is that there are things like poisonous mushrooms out there, right? We don't sell any of those at Spore, don't worry. But, there are some things that are not good for you. And even people have just regular allergies to some very, what should be very normal and not scary things, but people can be allergic to all sorts of things, so, or have drug interactions. So again, it's like always good to have a talk with your doctor before you try anything. But so talking about medicinal mushrooms and where they came in my mix, it's funny because I actually went into cannabis first. I didn't really know too much about medicinal mushrooms. I wasn't taught mycology as a graduate student or anything like that. So for me, I really did learn about the endocannabinoid system first, which is the body system that CBD and cannabis, THC, and everything works on in the body. A lot of fibromyalgia patients actually do use cannabis because it's very helpful in restoring balance to the endocannabinoid system. It's really helpful in reducing spasms and pain and things like that. But there are still some things that are not great about using cannabis, at least for me. One of the things that I found was that cannabis can make me very sleepy. And some people, smoke, say, a cannabis joint or something like that, or they eat an edible, and some of them feel a burst of energy and they're good. They're like running around their house or they're out of pain. For me, each and every time, no matter what I did, I would go to sleep. To this day, like we're talking like, years later after using cannabis, I still get very sleepy with cannabis. So for me, it's not a solution for fatigue. For me, trying out like CBD and things like that, not as effective for pain, didn't make me as sleepy, but I really needed something that was, going to help manage the pain, but also increase like my focus, my energy and things like that. And CBD didn't really give me like the burst of energy or anything like that. So here I was trying these different natural, plant medicine alternatives. They did get me off of my prescriptions, but I still felt like sluggish. I still felt very foggy. And I still was getting things like I was getting colds and flus and stuff all the time. So there was still something that was off. I was still having issues like getting rashes. I was allergic to a lot of foods and things like that. So, knowing from holistic medicine, it takes a long time to sort of rebalance your body after you've been sick for a while or after you've been on a lot of medications. And, just telling you about the laundry list of medications that fibromyalgia patients can be on. Think about your liver, think about your other body systems. They're absorbing all these toxic chemicals, and, it can take a long time for your gut to heal, your brain to heal, a lot of different systems to heal from that, your immune system. So I've always really felt like my immune system was really sluggish, and it got even worse after I started taking some of those medications and got off of them. I was still just always very sickly. And boosting my immune system was something that was really important to me. I know taking cannabis long-term can even reduce your immune system health a little bit. It can, if you smoke it can alter, your lungs, reduce some of the antioxidants that are in your lungs, and actually make you a little bit more susceptible to, say, respiratory bugs like, bacteria and viruses and things like that are floating around. Just because, again, smoking anything can irritate your lungs and, increase some exposure to some of those microbes. So for me, I wanted to make sure I was keeping myself healthy and looking into some other options. So, over the years, I did look into mushrooms, and it's been really fascinating. So there are actual mushrooms that are, one of the things we know is that they're really good for immune health. So, right. So there's chemicals called beta glucans in them, and what's really nice is that they modulate the immune system. So when we're talking about, hey, I'm always susceptible to being really sick all the time, like I literally would always take the most sick days out of work out of anyone I ever knew. I got every single cold that went through and everything like that. And so I started experimenting with some of the medicinal mushrooms and things like that, and found that they were very, very helpful. And so some of these mushrooms, of course, are in some of the Spore formulas that we sell. There's things like Mike's Mushroom Mix, which has a nice blend of 11 different mushrooms. They're great. Again, each of these mushrooms has their own specific profile. So what's really cool is that, ones might, help boost, one part of the immune system, like killer T cells and things like that. And other ones might work more on, say, the immune cells that are in your brain. So, it's really nice to have a variety because each of them has special active ingredients that do different things on different body systems. So like having a mix of a lot of different mushrooms, super helpful. So that's been one of the things that I've actually added to my mix, and it definitely has improved my energy. It's improved my immune system. One of the most potent immune boosters is actually a turkey tail, and that's really cool. Because again, if you feel like you're coming on, getting something, or if you, are feeling really run down, you're really stressed out, or you've noticed like, hey, I haven't been sleeping well for days, like I'm gonna catch something, you sort of know, right? When you're not feeling well, when you've flared up and things like that, like it's a snowball effect. Fibromyalgia and a lot of other chronic illnesses have these sort of patterns where you have like good days and then like you have too much stress, or you have not enough sleep, or whatever it is, like you have some kind of big trigger and then boom, the flare comes up, right? And, sometimes that you're going to put yourself in that flare state, and like there's nothing you do, like you have a work deadline or something, or you're like, you just had a horrible argument with your partner, right? Like, it's coming, you're stressed out, you didn't, help calm yourself down in time. So, the flare is coming, and it's sort of nice too, to be able to say, hey, I take care of myself. I take supplements and things like that. But also when I know that I've done something that causes me to be out of balance, I can reach for something that might help boost my immune system, help, reduce inflammation, help keep things in balance so that I can prevent a flare. And that's really nice to do with natural substances like the mushrooms and spore. So again, like turkey tail, I love because it's one of the best things for boosting your immune system. So of course, if you take these mushrooms every day, it's the best because again, your system's going to be imbalanced. But it's also nice to take like little extra doses of different things, like to protect and blend. Again, is what I use when I know like I've been exposed to like say potentially to like a virus or something. Or I know that I feel very, very run down and I'm about to like get sick, like I take some extra. And it's definitely been helpful. I work really, really long hours for some of the projects that I'm doing. A lot of people know that I've written like 5 books and things like that. So I'm always busy with fibromyalgia. And so sometimes it can be really hard to balance, a lot of different projects, speaking engagements, and things like that with having a disease. It really is a full-time job. So what I love is that the mushrooms really help me stay healthy so that I don't have to cancel anything. I don't have to cancel speaking engagement or a podcast interview or say, sorry, I can't hit that deadline. Like I'm sick for 5 days straight. And that used to be my life. When I was on medications, they really slammed my immune system hard. So that was one of the things that I noticed. That was not only I was in pain all the time, the medicines that they were giving me wasn't really helping too much. I was like groggy out of it. I was always getting sick. Like it just didn't feel like wellness to me. And what's nice, I think, is really moving to plant medicines, including like CBD, cannabis, medicinal mushrooms. It's been a big shift in my general health. And it's sort of funny. It's like sometimes you have these little shifts too that you don't notice until you write them down. And I'm a big, big fan of journaling because goodness, like you can make one small change and like you don't maybe really feel it until you write it down. You're like, goodness, I haven't taken this many naps, or goodness, I didn't get sick this month, or I'm sleeping better than I ever have before. I'm getting 7 days a week of 8 hours of sleep. Like goodness, what a big difference that is in my life. And I definitely suggest people, track their health. It's those little things, whether it's, adding mushrooms to your life and realizing that you're getting, less sick each month. Like those little things add up, right? Those less days off of work, right? They add up. More dollars in your pocket, right? Those things are really important, or more days that you can be active with your kids and things like that. So I think, those little changes you can make, even if it's just taking a supplement every day, is super helpful. So the other mushrooms I want to touch on, I mean, there's so many different kinds. One of the really cool ones is lion's mane mushrooms. So again, one of the biggest problems with fibromyalgia, besides the pain, is the inability to focus. So we call that like brain fog or fibro fog. That's the favorite term of our community because it really is sort of your baseline state is I forgot where my keys are. I don't remember that name, and it's something that I've even struggled with as a neuroscientist. And I hate to share my story sometimes because it's so embarrassing. You're like, well, I'm a neuroscientist. I'm a brain scientist. How could be forgetting words, right? And you want to be really presenting as very intelligent, very authoritative. But when you can't remember, very simple things like, hey, what's my address or something like that, right? You don't feel super confident. You don't feel super smart. And so anything that really, offsets that, it makes you focused, again, is really, really important. And so for me, like that was like the big thing that I needed to make sure that I can remember things when I'm giving talks, or I can remember things when I'm writing a book and not being stumped, right? And so for me, it took a bit of time, again, to find things that worked for me. Part of, again, those side effects of cannabis was, I felt like more out of it sometimes. And, the dose I needed for pain was making me not focused. It was making me a little ditzy, like it like lost, scatterbrained. Again, some people feel really focused from cannabis. I didn't. I just felt sleepy and a little out of it. And so for me, I needed something that either would offset those side effects or completely replace those things. And for me, lion's mane is really interesting because lion's mane really does help with focus. It helps with memory. It helps grow new brain cells, and it helps promote different nerve growth factors in the brain. And so think about fibromyalgia. There's a lot of nerve issues. There's a lot of brain issues. There's like literally fibromyalgia is like your brain is sort of circuiting, and I can't even say that word. It's basically like you have too much electricity firing off all the time in your brain and nerves, right? And it's causing feelings of pain, feelings of, burning, like all sorts of different things. But, it shouldn't be happening because nothing, you're not being shocked, you're not being burned, you're not being frozen, like nothing's happening to you, but you're feeling these pains, right? And so lion's mane is nice because, again, it's helping create a good, healthy environment for your brain and for your nerve cells. And that's really important because, again, fibromyalgia is associated with inflammation. And inflammation can really hurt your nerves. It can hurt your cells, things like that. It's really what ends up leading you to, sickness, to heart disease, all sorts of different things, anxiety, depression, whether it's a mental health disorder, whether it's gut disorder, whether, no matter what disease you have, the root cause of it is inflammation. And so if you can get something that can help reduce inflammation, that has antioxidants, that can protect the health of your neurons and keep them healthy, keep them from getting damaged. Remember, I mentioned that some people do have that neuropathy, that nerve damage in their hands, their feet, their legs, things like that. Hip is another place. There's a lot of different tender points that happen with fibromyalgia, and it's really helpful if we can reduce the inflammation, if we can reduce some of those signals, those pain signals that are shooting through our body. Very, very helpful. And I think that lion's mane, again, it helps with the brain fog, but it's also, again, promoting a healthy brain. And if your brain is healthy, you're going to have a lot less of those type of symptoms where you're not even sure why your body is responding in that way. Why am I feel like I'm being electrocuted and I want to go take a nap at the same time? Like those are two things that don't even make sense, right? So it really stops that, short circuiting of your nervous system. I found personally, it's been really one of the things that if I don't take lion's mane, I know. So it's sort of interesting because a lot of people ask me, well, like, which mushroom should you take if you have fibromyalgia? And my answer is sort of like all of them, to be honest. It's one of those things where you don't really see an overdose with mushrooms. You can use different mushrooms because they are really food. Think about it, right? Again, there are poisonous mushrooms that you should not eat and are not sold anywhere, as supplements. But, for the most part, most of the edible mushrooms, whether they're, the white button mushrooms that you might see in the store and things like that, they're not going to have a lot of nutritional value, medicinal value. But the ones that we call medicinal mushrooms or functional mushrooms, like reishi, like lion's mane, like cordyceps, maitake mushrooms, king trumpet mushrooms, things like that, they have so much value for your immune system. And they have so much value for your brain health, for reducing inflammation, for protecting different cells, nerve cells, protecting heart health. Like there's so many benefits. When you think about mental health, right? A lot of these different medicinal mushrooms, they do things like reduce anxiety, boost mood, again, improve sleep. Having a chronic illness like fibromyalgia can cause anxiety and depression over the years, right? It's a struggle to have a chronic disease, to know that there's not really a cure or an end to this. Like you have to manage this or take pills to keep this in check. Unfortunately, there's no grand cure for this disease because even the cause of it really hasn't been defined. We don't really know which gene causes this disorder, whether it's exposure to a toxin, whether it's a combination of things. Some people have even suggested that childhood trauma plays a part because your nervous system is overreacting to that trauma, and it causes changes that continue throughout adulthood and really manifest very physically in your body as these pain spots and miswiring in your brain. And so there's a lot of things that are happening here, but again, we know that mushrooms can do a lot of different things. They can provide a lot of balance. They can, again, in concert with some other plant medicines, with some other amazing herbal supplements, like we have in some of these spore blends, really do things like lower stress levels, right? And less stress equals less flares. So there's a lot of benefits. So in my case, when people ask me like, hey, what do you take? I take Mike's Mushroom Mix because it has a blend of like all those 11 major medicinal mushrooms, and that provides like a nice little baseline, like a nice little, almost like mushroom vitamin, I would say, because it's got a little bit of all of them. But we know too that it's really important to to see full medicinal effects of some of the mushrooms. Like if you're really looking for lion's mane, for example, to really help you with brain fog, to really help you with fibro fog and focus, right? You want more of that specific mushroom for that specific benefit. And so again, like focus performance, I use with the lion's mane when I really have to, focus on my work and not be a little scatterbrained or not forget words or things like that. Something that I actually took, right before this Q&A, because again, it really does help. When I have to talk for a long time, when I have to focus on one thing and I can't take a break. So for me, it's super helpful. Then there's other times, right? I might take other, supplements. Spore has a great energy performance blend, and it's got cordyceps in it. Cordyceps is a really amazing mushroom because it actually changes how your mitochondria and how your cells make energy. And we do know that in fibromyalgia, there is actually issues with how your mitochondria make energy. We know that in fibromyalgia, you have less of these mitochondria, these little energy factories. And if you do have them in there, they're not working so great. So they're like a factory that needs to be shut down. Like they're not working. They're like the machinery is malfunctioning and things like that. So think about it. When people with fibromyalgia, they always complain that they're too tired. Now, some of it's because you're not sleeping well and then you're having excessive daytime sleepiness. But the other thing is you could actually sleep 8 hours and wake up and still feel like you didn't sleep at all. And that's really frustrating, right? It's so frustrating to not have enough energy. And a lot of people complain about the spoons, right? Like there's a spoon system with chronic illness. And we always talk about, hey, you might start off, some of us start off with like 10 spoons. Some of us have like 3 spoons. It all depends on how well we are feeling with our disease or how many diseases we have, how old we are, all those different things, right? How many spoons do you start off with is even, different for different people. But say I'm doing really great and I've started off with 5 spoons, right? And then I wake up in the morning and I want to go clean my whole house. Out of spoons. Oh God, I just started. So a lot of people have to be very selective about some of the activities they do. If it's work, if it's taking care of their children, sometimes, socializing, right, is too much. And so you don't have any spoons left and you don't do that. Well, the nice thing about energy, right, is that if you have more energy, you're going to have more spoons. So energy equals free spoons. And so our goal really is always to have more energy so that we can do some of the things that we are missing out on, or we've sort of like crossed off our to-do list. Like that can't happen. I never have enough energy for it, right? Oh, I'm not going to ever go shopping in the mall because I can just do this online because, going in the mall is too exhausting, or going out to go see friends, too exhausting, right? The goal is to be able to do the things that you want to do or the things that you actually need to do. And you've just been, pushing off because you have more energy. And so what's really, really fascinating about cordyceps mushrooms is that there is clinical research around it helping your mitochondria make more energy. And again, more cellular energy is, again, one of the things that people with fibromyalgia need, but it's also something that a lot of people need. I'm pretty sure that our, nasty, sad American diet is probably causing a lot of harm in our systems. A lot of people say that they don't have enough energy, that they feel worn out, stressed out, burned out, whether, again, it's because of an illness or because of your job, because of stress, anxiety, things like that. I think a lot of us aren't making enough energy. We're eating food. Sometimes the food, again, if we don't have a very clean diet, we're taking in a lot of preservatives, we're taking in a lot of toxins, pesticides, things like that. We might be eating a lot of sugar or a lot of fat. And it might not be working for our bodies, right? And so it's causing us to be sluggish, to be sick. And I think that helping, again, we really do need to try, to try to eat as healthy as possible, but sometimes it isn't possible, right? And I think that, cordyceps mushrooms and some of these other mushrooms really do help us provide, some of, that support that we need when we can't sometimes even make the right decisions, because maybe we have a restricted budget and like the food, we're not being able to buy organic food. We're not able to get some of the things that we know are like what we need. You want to go get that, say, like organic salmon, that's wild salmon or something like that for a healthy brain. But then also, it's really expensive to go buy that. So like, what can you do instead to keep your brain healthy, to keep your heart healthy, to keep your energy levels boosted and things like that? And so cordyceps mushrooms is a pretty inexpensive mushroom, to take as a supplement. There are a lot more expensive supplements out there, but again, it's nice to be, when it is with some of these other herbs and things like that, like in the Spore energy performance blend. Again, it's something that if I wake up and I just feel like I haven't slept at all, which again is something that unfortunately happens a lot with fibromyalgia and other illnesses, including MS, including chronic fatigue syndrome and things like that. There's a whole laundry list of disorders where people just feel really, really tired when they wake up. I would say, instead of grabbing coffee, which can actually make you feel more wired and tired, it is really helpful to look to medicinal mushrooms. And again, lion's mane can help, increase focus. Combined with cordyceps, it's just like a knock out of the park for me for being able to really get rid of brain fog. And again, like, I can't say how embarrassed I was for years trying to hide sort of, some of the symptoms that I had with fibromyalgia. I was actually a reality TV star and a speaker. I was the first scientist on reality television on Big Brother. Like, I did all of these things before I got sick. And I didn't want anyone to know that I couldn't remember words, that I was in pain, that I was spasming. I just wanted to pretend like everything was okay. But the thing was, I would forget all the time. And for a while, like, I actually like sort of like went off screen. Like, I didn't go public in a lot of places and things like that because I didn't want people to see me trip up and things like that. And it really was these medicinal mushrooms that helped me get on track with my words, with my focus, with my energy, and be able to perform even better than I did before. And, what's really amazing, again, is that through using plant medicines, combining cannabis with medicinal mushrooms for me was one of the ways that I actually even went back to school. Like, imagine being so sick. And again, I had more than fibromyalgia. I like had brain injuries. Like, I had a lot of different things happen to me over a couple years. And I ended up actually going back to school and getting a executive MBA, which is a business degree, after thinking that I couldn't even remember words. So, like, there's so much improvement that's happened after medicinal mushrooms. That's like, I can't, thank them enough. Like, it's like, honestly, mushrooms have been a lifesaver for me. And again, not being sick, having energy, being able to remember words and things like that. Having lower stress levels, having less flare days and things like that. It's definitely been something that's been important for me. And so, again, I might have to, take a lot of different types of mushrooms to get the effects that I need, but it's because, you can't really go from taking, 11 medications to going like, oh, I just take one supplement. It's not going to fix everything when you have a lot of illnesses and you have, severe symptoms and things like that with a disease like fibromyalgia. So for me personally, it's been just, again, a lifesaver, and it's been amazing. So let's see. I'm going to just double check to here to see if we have any questions or anything like that. Again, if you missed out on the live, my name is Dr. Michele Ross, and we're talking about mushrooms and fibromyalgia today. So you can definitely drop in the comments any questions about fibromyalgia, any questions about wellness, plant medicine, medicinal mushrooms, things like that. If it's safe, which ones to use. We do have 5 different blends here at Spore, and we're also coming out with some new ones in about a month and a half, which will be pretty exciting. But again, for me, I've used all 5. I don't use all 5 in the same day, but I do use all 5 regularly, and they have been so helpful. For sleep, for example, again, managing stress, I love the chill out blend too. It's got ashwagandha in it, and it really works with the other mushrooms that are in that blend, the other herbs. And it really does help work to reduce my stress levels at the end of a busy day, right? If you're really focused and working hard, right? And then, when it's time to relax, sometimes you can't turn off your brain, right? You can't go to sleep and things like that. And so it's really nice to be able to just, unwind down. I also use cannabis before I go to sleep. So that is something that helps, again, like an edible form. I use cannabis to help reduce some of the pain and the spasms and things like that. So it's not just mushrooms, but it's just nice, again, to be able to look to these plants and fungi to really help heal with fibromyalgia. So it's been a really, amazing story. Here comes the fun part. So, we don't obviously sell magic mushrooms or psilocybin mushrooms at Spore because it's not legal yet at the federal level throughout the United States. In some cities across the United States and some states, they have legalized or decriminalized psilocybin containing mushrooms that you can even find in the wild. It's funny. It's not like some other things that are legal or scheduled here. Like, for example, if you go wander around in California or Oregon, you can actually find these magic mushrooms outside and things like that. So it's sort of interesting. Some of these cities and states have these medicinal but psychoactive or hallucinogenic mushrooms, and you can take them in different ways. Some people will take very small amounts of these psilocybin containing magic mushrooms, very, very small amounts where they're not going to hallucinate or something when they take them, but they take them to increase serotonin. They take them to increase creativity and focus and things like that. And there's different microdosing protocols and things like that. You can Google that online if that's something you're interested in. You live in a city like Denver, Colorado, or a state like Oregon, or city like Oakland, California, that has legalized these mushrooms to some extent. I've been involved in Denver and California in some of the groups that are trying to decriminalize or have decriminalized successfully some of the different plant medicines out there, including, again, fungi, magic mushrooms. And so it's really cool that, patients in some of these states or cities can, consume these mushrooms and use them for wellness purposes. So, for somebody with fibromyalgia, what would it mean to microdose? And does that mean you can't use, medicinal mushrooms and things like that? So microdosing psilocybin mushrooms, again, they're illegal in most parts of the United States, but some patients do use them to help, again, with some of that brain fog. So there are some consumers out there that might microdose small amounts of magic mushrooms, but also use things like like performance blend, for example, with lion's mane in it, because the psilocybin is actually working on your serotonin receptors. It's helping you focus. It's helping lift your mood. And when you have lion's mane on board, remember, again, lion's mane is creating a very healthy environment for your brain cells to grow. So it's nice. You might have some like a little bit of rewiring and things like that happen when the psilocybin is active in your brain. And so a lot of people will pair those type of mushrooms together to really sort of heal some of the, I wouldn't say, again, it can't heal like brain damage and those very small doses. We'll talk about much larger doses and some of the research that's out there. But I think it can, at very, again, small doses, regular use, help start the brain on the path towards healing instead of illness. And so it's really interesting. I hope that there's a lot more research around this. And I really do hope that a lot more groups start working to look at mushrooms, no matter what they do, as medicine or as wellness instead of, an illegal or recreational drug. I think that there's a lot of things, like if it comes from the ground, it should be legal. And, if it's definitely something that's not toxic. So when we think about pharmaceuticals, right, there's a lot of dangerous pharmaceuticals that you can be addicted to, or you can take an overdose and die from, stop breathing from, right? Like opioids, or even things like Xanax, right? You can become addicted to different anti-anxiety drugs or even antidepressant drugs. You can be dependent on them for years, and it can be very hard to get off them. With plant medicines, including, psilocybin containing mushrooms, medicinal mushrooms, they're safe. You can't overdose on these mushrooms. I mean, I'm sure some of them might make you nauseous and make you throw up a lot, if you took too much of them. And of course, that's what would happen with psilocybin mushrooms. But, you're not going to die. You may feel a little panic and things like that. Same with, cannabis. but you can't die from these substances. So that's actually really something that's so important to know, that these, different plant medicines are much safer than some of the other compounds that are prescribed and things like that. And so that's why they've become, very, I would say, interesting to a lot of chronic pain patients, including the people with diseases like fibromyalgia. So, those are options out there. Again, if you are thinking about microdosing and things like that, there are definitely, I would say, organizations that are educating on it. There are even doctors out there that are learning to work with some of the psychedelic medicines and things like that. There are psychiatrists that are psychedelic therapists and things like that. So there's some fascinating things. Now, why would you see a psychedelic therapist? So some doctors are actually working to help heal trauma and things like that with the same psychedelic mushrooms that we're talking about microdosing with. You can use large quantities of these mushrooms. So we're talking like 3 to 5 grams. So a bunch of big mushrooms, and take those. And it's interesting because people will hallucinate. They might go through trauma. If they're doing it recreationally, like at a concert or something like that, you're not really going to get the same healing experience. You're not going to get, say, a reduction maybe in some of your pain levels, or a reduction in some of your, like, I would say, hypersensitivity to pain or noise or things like that. But some patients do report when they do consume these things, whether intentionally with a doctor or in other settings, in other parts of the world. For example, Amsterdam, they have healing, circles with mushrooms and things like that, where people are guided during this experience where they are hallucinating for several hours, and then they have integration sessions where they, talk about what their visions were, things like that. There are these healings like circles and ceremonies and things like that do happen in other countries and other cultures. And we're trying to, learn from these different cultures, what was helpful. Did people actually heal PTSD from it? Did people heal addictions? Did they heal trauma? Did they heal pain from it? And we're just at the tip of learning about that. And so one of the things that is reported from a lot of chronic pain patients now is surprising, that they do find that large amounts of psilocybin mushrooms are helpful for pain patients. And people go, wait, people that are tripping at a say an EDM concert or something, like, they don't report, feeling like, oh, I'm not in pain or things like that. But people that are in chronic pain who take a lot of serotonin, that's what happens when psilocybin mushrooms, when you consume a lot of them, you're going to have a lot of activation of your serotonin system. And that's something that, again, serotonin is something that we don't make enough of as a fibromyalgia patient. And so it's sort of interesting that these mushrooms might actually help over time reduce inflammation, protect some of the nerve cells, maybe rebalance the brain in terms of serotonin. And so there might be a way, in the future that fibromyalgia patients can explore psychedelic medicine in addition to, some of the legal, sources right now, like medicinal mushrooms and CBD or cannabis. Again, those things are legal in different areas in different ways, but plant medicine, including, cannabis, kratom, mushrooms, things like that, is really a great alternative, or alternative medicine, or complementary medicine to things that are working for you for fibromyalgia. And the thing I want to stress, if you have something that's working for you, great, like, keep at it. Definitely don't abandon everything that you're doing right now if it's working for you. But if there's something that could add value, right? If you are looking to get more focused, right? Finding a mushroom or a mushroom blend that can really add that focus or add that energy during your day, provide a little bit of a boost in the quality of your life, right? That's something that, everyone should think about, right? Like, don't get comfortable in your regimen, but like, also, again, if you have something like, you're like, okay, my 4 prescriptions are working for me, I just feel a little sluggish in the morning, like, go for that symptom, like, work on that symptom, but like, don't be like, okay, I'm going to get rid of them all and like transition to plant medicine. I would say that traditional medicines do work for some patients. And I think that is so important to talk with your doctor about both traditional treatments, alternative treatments, supplements, and things like that. Now, again, not every doctor is open to those conversations. You really want to go with someone that might have some experience in holistic medicine. A lot of times DOs are much more open than MDs that are much more Western medicine trained and things like that. So really holistic or functional medicine practitioners are sometimes really helpful in exploring some of the alternatives. And again, you can do your own education. You can learn about these things, right? You can learn about mushrooms. One of the things I love about Spore, right, is it gives you all the information on the different mushrooms, right? It gives you information about reishi and chaga and cordyceps and things like that. So you can start to learn and educate yourself. And again, most medications don't interact with mushrooms. I would say that things like thyroid medication, you have to be careful about taking any food, including food-based supplements like mushrooms. And it's just like, hey, time when you take your mushrooms differently than when you take your different medications. That's usually the way to avoid any of these interactions. Of course, again, always check with your doctor or pharmacist that it's safe to take mushrooms, medicinal mushrooms with your medication. But for the most part, it's something that, adds value. Those little shifts, sometimes you don't realize how important they are until you have them in your life. And when you realize that you can focus again at work, or you can focus, on your kids a little bit better, or you have the energy to add, 2 or 3 more spoons to your day, and now you are socializing with friends, or you're cleaning your house now finally. It's those little changes that are really, really key. And, looking at my progress with this disease over the years, it's been those little changes. I can literally, point to a calendar. This is when I started taking cordyceps. Like, this is how it changed my life. Okay, lion's mane. Like, this is the things that happened after I took these things. They're not, for me, they weren't really subtle. Like, they were huge. They were life-changing for me, as a neuroscientist, with fibromyalgia, struggling to find that balance between working and healing. And it's something that I've also used, with my clients. I've done a lot of health coaching with both fibromyalgia and other chronic pain patients, and patients that struggle with anxiety and depression over the years, working with them with plant medicine. And I really do find that, these combinations of plant medicine really do work. And so, if you are struggling right now, I would say, learn as much as you can, ask questions in communities like this. One of the things I'm really proud of is that Spore has me in here to be able to answer your questions. So please, if you do have questions about health, wellness, mushrooms, ask them here. Because this is a safe place for the Spore community. As we're learning about mushrooms, as we're learning about how to use them for our wellness, we're learning how to control our mind to really, take back our lives, right? Reduce stress, increase gratitude, reduce, the number of pain days, flare-up days, things like that we struggle with, really improve the quality of our life. And so I think that 2021 has been, an amazing transformational year. And I think that we should take advantage of that transformation. And then again, that time, that pause that we all had to really think about how we're going to go back into our new lives. How are we going to go back more focused? How are we going to go back as our best version of ourselves? For me, I spent a lot of time this past year really, really healing, really, really diving in deep, and doing some of the hard, both mental work and physical work to really heal. And I'm really happy to be able to share some of those things with you guys here in this Spore group. I really want to cheer you on as you take some big changes in your life, right? Because really the decision, the difference between chronic illness and chronic healing is just a mind shift. What are you going to do tomorrow? Are you going to take a choice that makes you sicker, or are you going to make a choice that makes you healthier? And I think that even baby steps every single day, they add up. They do shift your life. An extra 5 minutes of sleep a day is going to be huge over the long term. An extra 5 minutes of energy, every minute counts, especially like if you're a busy mom who's sick, So I would say that take the time to educate yourself about these things. Take your time to educate yourself about mushrooms. If you've been watching, I really hope that you can share, some of the things that we had here, share this video, tag a friend. Again, in the Spore community, you can't really tag anyone that's not in there. So just let people know about this community. And hopefully, we can, change the conversation about some of this chronic illness and start using medicinal mushrooms and other natural treatments to really, make our lives better. And I think that, I love Spore. Spore is like the name of basically like the seed of like mushrooms, right? And so I think that, spreading the spore, spreading the word about medicinal mushrooms is so important. So, if you've seen any improvements to taking a Spore, definitely share with friends, let them know that how medicinal mushrooms are working for you, because I think that they can really do some amazing things in your life. Again, I am so happy to be here for this community. I will be in here, most Wednesdays at 5 p.m. PST. Again, if you have any questions for me, please post them anytime in the Spore community group. I'm here for you. I'm just happy to be able to share my story about fibromyalgia today for Fibromyalgia Awareness Day on May 12th, and tell you a little bit about how medicinal mushrooms have helped me, including also the psychedelic one. So hopefully it was an enlightening conversation. Thank you guys so much. I hope you have a beautiful Wednesday evening, and I will see you here next week. Have a good one.